I don't think Google will go away, but it's also, AI search is definitely a channel that everyone in the C-suite, growth leaders, marketing leaders need to be thinking about and prepping for. The searches and the way we're using ChatGPT and Perplexity, the queries just look different. It's very much more topic-based than it is keyword-based. Focus on what I call the middle funnel, which is that consideration content for products. And that really drove a lot of our growth initially in those early stages at ClickUp. I like what the consultant Eli Schwartz has to say, where he talks about having search market fit. And are you starting to see demand for your product on Google, on the LLMs? If you're not really seeing it, then that might not be the right channel for you. The exponential growth of ChatGPT being the most popular one is like on an exponential growth curve. So where we think at its current pace, it could even pass Google searches by like 2027, 2028. I think local search still hasn't been figured out with LLMs. Restaurants near me, that type of search. Fresh, regularly updated content helps you appear in LLMs. It is about the mention, it's about the citation, it's about being top of mind to the buyer. Content creation and then community building we're seeing is important as well. If that's on Reddit, if that's on Quora, if that's on LinkedIn, as far as getting your mentions there and impressions there, because we're seeing the LLMs pick that up as well today. And even AirOps, where you can take a piece of content and then repurpose it in several ways and then push that out to like multiple channels. For their advertising business, they have really good cost per click rates on there. So Google's still making a lot of money off of that comparison type content. And Ramp and Bristol are advertising for content engineer roles because they see this need to maintain workflows and to keep it up to date for content to where search is resetting in a new way. And so that means you're going to need some new skills and some new strategies to take advantage of that.
So, Josh, just for the users and also for you also, you've driven like a huge growth, 700 plus percentage plus at ClickUp. You've scaled content at TopTal. You're leading content and SEO at AirOps. So which patterns have you seen that the companies adopt where the content leads to SEO results and where companies struggle to gain any organic traction?
Yeah, sure. I think traditionally a lot of companies have not really focused on their core topics, and I like to think of it as their jobs to be done. And so they're kind of chasing things like all over the map. And I think it's really important to have kind of to break down your topics into, clusters or something like that. I like to think of maybe 5 jobs to be done that you can focus on and then really like nail those, build them all the way out and then move on to the next one. Because of business realities and such, that's not always possible, but I like to try to stick to that if you can, where you build out kind of one pillar, one cluster at a time. So that's how we've seen a lot of success there. Obviously, that's kind of in the old model of Google search. Obviously, things are changing a lot with LLMs and AI search. So happy to talk about that too, but that's a really good way to think about growth. But one area that I think does hold is I've always focused on what I call the middle funnel, which is that consideration content for products. And that really drove a lot of our growth initially in those early stages at ClickUp. And so that's like comparison pages, alternative pages, list. How does your product really stack up to some of the competitors? But a lot of times it's also category pages too. So it's best CRM software or something like that, if people are just trying to find a new solution but don't always know, aren't always product aware. So really focusing on your categories among like 5 different topics, 5 different jobs to be done, I think is still a really solid way to go about things.
Okay, that's awesome. And how do you think about building content or maybe SEO strategy where any startup or company is actually building a new category? So obviously within a category, you can do all of those comparison and everything. But how would you build content for a where they're going to define the new category?
Yeah, defining a new category is always difficult, I would say, with SEO or with AI search. I like what the consultant Eli Schwartz has to say, where he talks about having search market fit. And are you starting to see demand for your product on Google, on the LLMs? If you're not really seeing it, then that might not be the right channel for you. It's a very different channel to prove out because, yeah, the old stereotype goes that it takes like 3 to 6 months, potentially longer. And so a lot of startups, a lot of new businesses may not have that type of timeline. So it's always good to have that early validation first, maybe on, PPC search, that type of thing. Otherwise, I would probably focus my efforts on, if you're going the organic route, try to find like a social way to do it, either through like founder content or something like that, or even paid social posts to really kind of gain that traction, is trying to find what content resonates. Because if you start to put it on social, you'll see the feedback, you'll see some resonance or not resonance, and then that can also direct kind of your SEO efforts.
Okay. And obviously SEO is evolving this with all of this LLM, but there are other channels also. The people are searching content on TikTok, they're getting answers for GPTs. So there's LinkedIn is there. So how does this change the content strategy? And like, how are you thinking about it at AirOps? Are you still thinking about Google first, or you're approaching things very differently at the moment?
Yeah, good question. At AirOps, we're kind of a startup, but we focus a lot on SEO. We have content workflows. We have AI search capabilities coming. And this is really to help as a content management platform for organic search teams and for SEO teams. So we're kind of running, I would say, a couple different tracks. One of them is kind of like a thought leadership track, where we have conversations very similar to this with leaders in the industry to really get their insights. We're also putting our perspectives and slant on the world about just how AI is changing, how search is changing, those type of things. And then in addition to that, we're building a lot of content around some of these really hot LLM, AEO, AI search topics to really gain some of that search. So, we don't really, those content is good to have, and we do expect conversions from those at some point as far as the SEO type content goes, but we know that's kind of a longer game. And so we're seeing a lot of more immediate conversions from, say, our social content, our thought leadership content. So it's really a blend there. But kind of going back to my previous, if I was like really strapped for resources, and depending on my product market fit, I'd probably focus on the thought leadership first and then build up to the search content.
Oh, okay. And what's the relevance of Google at this point right now? Because right now, people are getting answers from the AI directly. Okay, so the era of like having all of the searches listed down and then going through those and clicking those and making your own judgment is kind of like going away. So how are you thinking about the role of Google at this point right now?
Yeah, sure. Great question. Google search still is very huge. Most of the sites that we talk to, it's still like 80, 90% of their traffic. But what we are seeing, and I have some good graphs and stuff to show, is that the exponential growth of ChatGPT being the most popular one is like on an exponential growth curve, to where we think at its current pace, it could even pass Google searches by like 2027, 2028, something like that. So we're talking about a very short time frame here. I would also say it depends on your business. I think local search still hasn't been figured out with LLMs. Restaurants near me, that type of search, Google's obviously very dominant and has very many different products across the market. So I don't think Google will go away, but it's also, AI search is definitely a channel that everyone in the C-suite, growth leaders, marketing leaders need to be thinking about and prepping for, because we also know that there's a bit of a lag time, right? There's a lag time between getting your initiatives in place, getting your KPIs in place, getting your strategy, your motion, even your hiring in place before that starts to take. So we really view the next 6 months as being mission critical to getting this stuff down before you kind of fall really far behind.
And how would you like make a content which is AI engine worthy? So which signals are the most important for AI engine to quote you or choose you? Because that becomes the most important thing at this point right now.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of research on this right now, but
Mm-hmm.
we did an AEO scorecard report where we ranked like the 50 top SaaS companies based on some of these AEO readability factors. And we're also continuing our research. This is kind of what we know now, but what we're seeing is fresh, regularly updated content helps you appear in LLMs. Having good, easy readability and structure also helps. So There's all these different metrics like a Fleisch score and different things like that about judging like what grade level your content is on. So if it has good readability, that's important. Structure, we're talking like bullet points, we're talking about FAQs, things like that really helps. And then I think we call snippet extractability, which is just like, how is your sentences constructed? Is it a dense type sentence? So you even have to think about optimizing down on the sentence level. The fourth thing we're seeing here is around evidence attribution and what we're calling like front loading that evidence. So data, reports, first person insights, subject matter, expert insights is all really important. So quoting people like yourself in articles for Xgrid would really, add some credibility there. Quoting experts in the field add some credibility there. So using things like that helps with LLM visibility. And then to be honest, what we're seeing too is just good brand alignment. So if you're already a popular brand, you're probably going to appear in LLMs. If you're still gaining your foothold in the market, then you will have to really over-index on some of those other elements to get there. But right now, if you're looking for like the best soda, I'm sure Coke will appear number one, or Pepsi for that matter. So the age-old battle.
Yeah. So just from my thinking perspective, I believe all of these initiatives are pretty much SEO driven initiatives that you're talking about. So essentially, if you're good at SEO, you'll somehow or other rank in LLMs also. Or is this statement not correct?
Yeah, we're seeing a shift there for sure, and we're trying to explore it. I'm hearing from different people, like I do a lot of talks like these, and what we're seeing is that I was on a talk the other day, and Steve Toth, a really good SEO expert, was saying how LLMs are even surfacing down to like the feature level because people are doing deeper searches. So the example he gave, and I used to be in project management software, but he was like Asana versus ClickUp for project time tracking. And it used to not create pages that deep. But what we're seeing is because the queries are longer, because the conversations and chats are longer, and you might even have this from your own like anecdotal and personal use, like the searches and the way we're using ChatGPT and Perplexity, the queries just look different. It's very much more topic-based than it is keyword-based. So to go back to what I was even talking about at the beginning, you really need a comprehensive element to your pages because you're not exactly sure which page the LLM is going to take from. So it might take a little snippet from here, a little snippet from here, another one here, then create their answer. And so you don't know exactly what page it's going to be taking from in that case, compared to like the old way of doing Google searches where you're optimizing on the URL, the keyword level. So all of your pages really have to be consistent, and that goes to that brand and that brand alignment to help surface it. So that's kind of what we're seeing is there's definitely some overlap, but the difference is as the platforms become more mature, we'll start to amplify.
Oh, okay. So there are quite a few like buzzwords going around, and there's this GTM engineering that has come up, and you talked about content engineering. So let's just for the audience, let's talk about what is content engineering, how are you thinking about it, and how have you with different companies worked at it? So right.
Yeah. So a few months ago, I wrote a post that kind of really took off a bit called The Rise of the 10X Content Engineer. And content engineering has actually been a thing about putting like content management systems and things like that together. But what I really noticed was a need for kind of stitching workflows together. And that's what AirOps does as part of its core platform is you have all of these workflows that you can use for SEO and content teams. So for example, we run this webinar or this podcast. I do some webinars and podcasts. We can stitch together some workflows with LLMs to help us get a summary, email recaps, social post recaps, all of these different things. You can do the same thing for content and SEO around like URL, meta description, meta titles, refreshing your content, getting refreshed suggestions, creating FAQs or questions to go with it. And AirOps has these workflows that you can then stitch together using these different triggers with the LLMs to be able to create these things in our workflows, and then it populates into a grid. All that to say is like, I noticed the need that you need a different person on a content and SEO team that hasn't been there before. It's a role that hasn't been there as far as who is stitching these things together, who is maintaining these workflows. Who is taking what the strategist is thinking about, saying like, hey, I need to refresh all of these URLs. How can we build a system to really do that? And that's why you need a content engineer to build that out. So think about Zapier, think about Make or something like that. Who is maintaining those type of things? You now need that person on the content and SEO teams. And that revolution has also come, I would say, to other growth teams as far as like a GTM engineer goes, is a very popular term. I like to think about it back to, Zapier or something even like HubSpot did, 10 or 15 years ago with an inbound marketer. You now had a new set of tools that needed a new place in the marketing tech stack, but also on the marketing team. That's the same thing that's happening with AirOps and similar tools. Is we have these new capabilities and you need a new role on your marketing or growth team to really take advantage of it and to really build these out.
Okay, so consider this. I mean, you have talked about LLM engines and their video platforms and their Reddits, their LinkedIn. So there are multiple content channels that are out there, and you have to feed in all of those, right? So how does this content engineering or maybe AirOps is actually helping them doing this part where we're feeding in all of those channels with the right relevant content and making the brand relevant across all?
Yeah, sure. So you can use AirOps to like do those signals that I talked about earlier. You can use AirOps to help update your content, to help you surface, to do research, to help you even summarize sales calls and things like that. And then you can actually push these out to your CMS. So if it's Webflow or WordPress or Strapi or something like that, you can take this refresh content and then push it out to your CMS. We're also working on some new capabilities to help you know where you're appearing in Reddit, how you're appearing in the LLMs. So then you can take those metrics, those visibility signals, and then really create action behind it, and then enact these workflows to help you appear in the LLMs and to get more impressions from those. Because what we're really seeing is brand visibility is becoming more important with LLM searches. It's not always about the click. It is about the mention. It's about the citation. It's about being top of mind to the buyer. So when you search or look for a query in an LLM, you might not click out of the LLM to a website, but if AirOps shows up, if HubSpot shows up, if Coca-Cola shows up, then you'll like type that in or go directly to that site, or you might just, schedule a demo once you go to that site. So it's a lot of kind of old ways of advertising in some ways. If you think about a billboard or a commercial, you didn't directly click onto your TV. You didn't directly click as you passed the billboard in your car or on the highway. You remembered it, you got an impression, you bought it at the store, or you searched for it later. And we're seeing that kind of come back in some ways.
So, but doesn't this make it maybe the top of funnel content becomes more relevant for the brand awareness? Or because obviously you talk more about the middle of the funnel now. Okay, you're a proponent of middle of the funnel content.
Yeah.
But so how do you think about that then?
Well, top of funnel content does serve a really important purpose, I would say, for emerging categories, but you have to think about the LLMs are trained on like a lot of old information, right? That's their training data. So if you're going to write about the history of something, a history in the world, your new blog post about the World War II is not going to probably appear in the LLMs unless you have like unless you're like an expert, have a really good take on it. If you're like a professor of history or something, right? So if you're just summarizing it, they're just going to go from like Wikipedia or try to capture it. What we're seeing in a lot of the categories on SaaS tools is we were writing all this kind of what I call what is content, or just really high level, like what is marketing, what is finance, what is invoice management. All of these type of things won't necessarily mention your brand. However, if you do a deeper search on some of that, then you might start appearing in the citation or the LLM, in the mentions of the LLM with deep research and things like that. So, honestly, I would still focus on the middle and bottom funnel content. We're seeing a lot of that be valuable and cited in LLMs. It's also not being captured in Google search as far as the AI overviews go. Those posts are still appearing towards the top. Google isn't cannibalizing those yet because they know it's really good for their advertising business. They have really good cost per click rates on there. So Google's still making a lot of money off of that comparison type content. So that's why I keep going back to like the middle and bottom funnel content, because a lot of the LLMs already know like some of this, even like medical or health data. You know, a lot of those big sites like WebMD are getting a hit on this because the LLMs already have some of this. And that's why you see like Cloudflare taking some actions around maybe charging LLMs to access like sites and things like that.
Okay. And how do you see Google responding to all of this? Obviously, Google is a huge giant. Okay, they have this truckload of cash with them, and they have the best engineers and everything working on it. So obviously, they're building their own tool. They're getting traction or not traction. But do you foresee a future where maybe this AI generated content might not get visibility on Google, or somehow that they figure out a way, okay, this has to be a human written or human generated content which gets some visibility? Do you foresee something like this happening?
Well, number one, I think Google is going to still be around. I already mentioned that. I think the interface that they have will kind of shift more to like a Perplexity or ChatGPT looking interface. AI mode is already out for that, and that's kind of what it's looking for. I don't think that brand mentions will go away. I don't think brands, I'll keep it at mentions, because there's a little bit of debate about what a mention versus citation is. Usually a citation is like a direct link. A mention may just like mention your brand without linking back to it. So I think there will always be a place for those brand mentions, which then would increase your impressions on the company side. And so will increase your direct traffic on that side as well. And I think that it will always hold. I think Google will have some type of place in the search journey. They just may not have as big a proportion as they currently do of the market. But there's a lot to be known here. We don't know how a pay subscription model is going to work long-term for Perplexity or ChatGPT, or if they introduce advertising. Like, there's still a lot of unknowns right now, which is kind of what makes it fun too.
Okay. So let's just talk about now GTM engineering. Okay, so I guess this term is actually more popular now. People actually know about it. So how would this GTM engineering stack look like for this content-led growth, and which tools or automations are like a must-have for actually building the content and building this pipeline?
Yeah, sure. So I'll speak a little bit more to content engineering over GTM, even though I know a little bit about it. And we actually use some GTM tools at AirOps as well. But what we're seeing is people from big brands like Webflow and Ramp and Vercel are advertising for content engineer roles because they see this need to maintain workflows and to keep it up to date for content. And we've actually created a cohort program at AirOps. You can go to airops.com/cohort to where we're training people in these things to help them build out workflows for their SEO and content teams. And so we're seeing a lot of people use AirOps. There's other tools that you can use as well, but people are really unlocking the value of building systems around their content to move a lot faster. So you can use AirOps to build your brief. You can use it to build an outline. You can even use it to build a draft if you want, but we always suggest keeping humans in the loop before pushing it there. We had a quote yesterday from someone who's the brand, but they were like, our top most picky people are so excited about AirOps because of the content it's producing and the customization that you can add to AirOps compared to like some of these other tools really make it sound on point and on brand. How you maintain that, how you keep that up is where you really need a content engineer to think about this holistically. Because ChatGPT, I use ChatGPT every day and I use AirOps every day, and ChatGPT is really great for like kind of some one-off ideas or like, hey, should I do a post on this? How should I draft this? But if you're starting to think about your content at scale, we're talking hundreds, thousands of URLs that all need to be refreshed, that all need a new meta title, that all need to have content or data added to it. You're going to need a system for that. You're going to need workflows to really help you do that. And AirOps has a great grid to where you can set up these workflows and then hit a play button through different segments of the flow and then double check the work of AirOps to make sure it's on brand and what you want it to say, and even edit in our WYSIWYG editor to then push it out to your site or to then use it in other areas of your marketing or content needs. So that is an important, AirOps having that content workflows is an important part of the stack, no matter what tool you use. We're also seeing a new need for LLM visibility and monitoring tools as well, and we're rolling out some new things around that here shortly. And then maybe speaking beyond AirOps a bit, we're seeing a lot of automation and sales enrichment data that's needed for GTM. We're seeing a lot of, again, building these type of workflows in some other tools to help reach people where they are, and also make it personal too.
Okay, so Google historically has been very conservative in the nature, because most of the search results would actually go, and all of the clicks would actually go to companies who've been around for a while, and they have this. Obviously, they have this content, they have this brand, and everything. They would actually get all of those clicks. With LLMs, how do you see? Are they still mentioning or quoting the old companies, the companies who've been around for a while, or is it something there's a different touch to it?
Yeah, I mean, the dominant players are still going to get quoted quite a bit, I would say.
Mhm.
And I think it, just like at the beginning of Google search, it was kind of the established players. And so you really have to be consistent with it. You really have to start putting in the work, and you might also have to create more pages than you did before to get kind of that same level of traffic. Going back to my previous example about Asana and ClickUp on time tracking, you might have to create a whole new page for that, where you didn't create that page, say 3 or 4 years ago, because Google was picking it up in their way and in their algorithm. So that goes back to another reason why we're seeing a big need for AirOps, is just how do you create this content at a large volume, at a large scale? And you really need systems involved to do that, along with human oversight. So it is a hybrid model. It is a blend of the two. But yeah, I think that's how we're kind of seeing it shake out as far as like content production goes. But topic clusters are important, content creation, and then community building we're seeing is important as well. If that's on Reddit, if that's on Quora, if that's on LinkedIn, as far as getting your mentions there and impressions there, because we're seeing the LLMs pick that up as well.
Yeah, so let's just talk about maybe the early stage companies who are just starting up, and maybe we'll talk about the B2B companies for now. So obviously they have to start their journey, and so in which, and they don't have the option of having those teams which can go on all directions. So what the focus should be, is it like a traditional SEO, or is it like this AI optimized zero-click content? Where should they focus on at this point? At this point, right now?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard, I would say, for startups to really crack in here at this exact moment. But I would say create content around your job to be done and your specific topics, and be known for that. And then the more you're known for that, the more you'll have like the right people kind of gravitate towards you. So start publishing content, I would say, on LinkedIn or on YouTube, whichever kind of channel you prefer there. And start going after it, and just be known for your certain topics that you always want to be known for. The great thing though with using that and having kind of a content pillar, either like a YouTube video or a podcast or even a good LinkedIn post, is you can repurpose and reuse that in several ways. And that's always an important element, is to really think about how much you're creating versus how much you're distributing and repurposing. So that's an advantage of a lot of the AI tools today, and even AirOps, where you can take a piece of content and then repurpose it in several ways, and then push that out to like multiple channels. One channel that I always find really valuable that's kind of beyond this is building out an email list and a newsletter. That's something I've really focused on at AirOps as well, to help you get some of that initial traction, and to always have like kind of a really solid foundation of getting distribution and pushing your message out. That's like a little bit beyond just Google search or LLM visibility. So if I'm thinking about the content marketing as a whole, that's something I would definitely think about too.
So let's just talk about this email building list that I think you've done it for AirOps. So how do you start this process? How did it look like? what was the investment that went into it, and what were the results? If you can just maybe share with the audience.
Yeah, for the email newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate to have a pretty good list. We got over 40% open rates on average. And what I just do on that is I first came in and we had a huge, massive list, like 30,000 plus. I really cut it down to about a third of that with engaged letters or engaged subscribers. So people who had engaged in our brand and say like the last 3 months. And we've gone through a lot of pivots and things like that. So it was kind of an old stale list. So I would say your deliverability is always important. And so focus down on that list. It could really start by, there's a lot of great tools out there, Beehive or Substack or something like that. We use a more traditional email system called customer.io to just send our stuff out. It's a very traditional thing. You could use a lot of different tools for that. But I think what's made us stand out a little bit is just that consistency along with the good content. And I try to publish on Wednesdays and Thursdays if possible. I don't think anybody is setting their watch to when AirOps publishes their newsletter, but I take a lot of cues from, it's a roundup type newsletter, but I take a lot of cues from like popular Substackers and creators on just how they frame things and how they talk about their content. And so I'm using LLMs to help, I wouldn't say write it, but to help refine it. And I think that's a really important way. So a lot of my prompts in LLMs for my newsletter involve things like, you're an expert newsletter editor at Morning Brew and The Atlantic with experience at BuzzFeed or something like that. Give me a subject line that's in the style of Morning Brew. Give me a subject line that's in the style of Business Insider. Give me one that's in the style of The Atlantic. And then I'm really looking at these companies who have built their whole businesses around email and what that means, knowing that we're trying to take a smart slant on some of this AI search type thing. So those are some of the brands that I look towards as who we want to emulate and copy. If you're a creator or influencer or in a different space, you might want to like add in some different examples there. But that's one of the values that I'm seeing of just, LLMs in creation and helping with my email newsletter. But then I'm using that newsletter to then go to my site. So I have like what I call a TLDR of a recap of a webinar, a TLDR of a blog post, a TLDR of our product update, and then I send it out, and then I link out to our specific webpage for more information. And so that's kind of the style I've taken, and that helps drive traffic to our actual site because I want people to book a demo or to sign up for AirOps. The newsletter is an important channel, but it's not the product itself like a Substacker. Where the newsletter is the product. Our product is not a newsletter. It's content workflows. It's content operations and management platform, right? So that's what I'm pushing people towards. So that's the style I've taken. I've always wanted to do newsletters at other companies I've been with. It just hasn't been a priority. And so that was one of the first things I set up here. And it's given us a good foundation for traffic and to announce things.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Tell us about some of the AirOps use cases where a company who just maybe early stage company who just came in, started using it. How exactly, what were the use cases what were the workflows that they deployed, and what were some of the results? Maybe that would be great for the audience.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had several folks from, I think I mentioned like Webflow and some other Descript has used us as well. I'm trying to look up some of these cohort folks on here. If you go to airops.com/cohort, you'll see people from Notion, Webflow, BigCommerce, and you'll also see their workflow videos. And so some of them have like the person from Notion created a workflow that used some of their internal data to cut research time down on just topics they've already written about, for example. Another one turned webinar recordings into polished blog posts from taking insights and even direct speaker quotes. And we're able to like inject those into previous blog posts, which is also a workflow I'm working on right now too. We have workflows for refreshing our content around GSC, Google search data, and looking at like the clicks versus impressions to then understand which ones we need to update. I'm looking at our page right now, and we have somebody from Carta who did a workflow to help her surface information around like policy news and social media and government sources. Like essentially anytime there was a topic mentioned, to be able to like pull that in. And she is now, she was on the content, her name is Lucy, and she was on the content team at Carta, or on the marketing team, but then officially became a content engineer to help automate a lot of her weekly policy research that she was doing. So those are a few examples. We also have folks from like Docebo, Vanta, lots of other great companies as well, to help also. I'm looking at another one right now. She had a workflow to like combine some blog posts into like a larger lead magnet and help that flow. So those are some of the examples that folks are using AirOps for.
Yeah, and so those are like a bit established companies, I would say. So what's your persona at this point right now? Who are your ideal ICP at this point right now?
Yeah, we're looking at like late stage venture to like Fortune 1000 or so to be able to do this is who we're kind of focusing on. I would say even to like do a lot of these repurposing things, you wouldn't necessarily need to have a big company. We have a lot of agencies who use us too to work with their clients who may not need all of what AirOps can offer, but we're having a lot of agencies build out workflows for their clients to really have that leverage at scale. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of different use cases around that. And so a lot of it is just that keyword research, brief creation, outline creation, getting a first draft, human review, publish to the site, then have another workflow to where you can repurpose that content for your social, for your email, for even several emails, for example. So I would say that's a pretty typical use case of AirOps, from that research stage to that all the way through the repurposing as far as the workflows go.
And in terms of timelines and setting those up, like and obviously the learning curve, is it like very steep? Does it take too much of a time? So when do the companies start seeing the results?
Yeah, great question. It does take some time to build out the workflows. And so we have a team that helps build those out for companies on, obviously it depends on the contracting. A lot of companies hire or, task somebody on their content or SEO team to start building out the workflows and exploring. But yeah, it takes a little bit of setup time. Usually we see folks from like a week to 2 weeks really getting it down. It also just depends on your past history of working with tools. If someone has Python experience or like JSON experience, they can like build these out a lot faster. If you came from like a writing background, like I have, it might take you out a little bit longer, because really it's like Q&A, debugging. It really is like a product, a kind of a product role to be able to build some of these things out. And so having that blend of SEO content expertise with those technical skills is a sweet spot, and that's why we're training a lot of folks to be able to take advantage of this. And I think we've almost had, I think we're nearing like 100 people that have gone through our cohort in only like 3 months. So it's been a really great program.
Okay. And these cohorts are for agencies also, or is it more towards the end consumers?
No, yeah, we have agency clients too. I don't know if we have a chat or what, but I can like drop it in here for us. And then we have, so we have a lot of agency clients that use us and build this out for their clients.
Okay, that's awesome. So obviously, I think this has been a great talk. We've pretty much covered a lot of stuff. Is there anything that I missed that you wanted to add, and maybe you want to comment on that?
Yeah, AI search is changing a lot of the way people interact with their content. And so I think a new surface and a new way of search and a new way of content means that you're going to have a new way of processes and a new way of doing things. And so it really is a reimagining across the board for a lot of content, SEO, and marketing teams about what the next org setup looks like. And so I really encourage people to think about that, how they maybe need to shift their organization, but also how they need to take advantage of what some of these new tools can do. Because what we call it internally is like there really is a Google reset happening, to where search is resetting in a new way. And so that means you're going to need some new skills and some new strategies to take advantage of that.
Okay. So to be honest, I really enjoyed this conversation. I could have continued more. So I mean, it's a tangent, it's on tangent. Any books that you recommend, maybe current books or some older books that you recommend to a user to consume that could help them with this, maybe this topic in general, or
Um,
podcast or some other
yeah,
thing.
yeah, sure. I would say Growth Memo from Kevin Indig is a really good one. Product-led SEO from Eli Schwartz is another really good newsletter. I'm having this guy Steve Toth from SEO Notebook is a great resource. Aleda Solis, who is going to be on our webinar series in a couple weeks. Her newsletter is called SEO FOMO. I'm trying to think of some other ones, but those are all like really great resources. I would say an agency partner who's doing great stuff is iPull Rank with Mike King. He also has a lot of great blog posts. So for anybody trying to like ascertain, there's a lot of other folks I could mention too, probably, but anyone who's trying to like ascertain what is next, I would keep an eye on those folks along with airops.com/blog. It's always really helpful.
Yeah.
airops.com/report. We have a lot of great reports coming down in our own data
Mhm.
research too.
Okay, Josh. So again, I really appreciate all of your time, and I think this was a very, very valuable session for us. So we'll stay connected, and yeah. So best of luck with your air ops and everything. Okay.